John here, and today we're going to talk about a review First Blood. And this is the complete collector set, which you have First Blood through Rambo 4. And what more can you say about the first movie? You know, it's a classic, and everybody knows the story. You know, Vietnam veteran John Rambo, he wanders into town, looking for a friend, and soon he's harassed by local law enforcement, and he's taken in for vagrancy. Long story short, he breaks out of their custody and he makes a run for the mountains. You have Sheriff Teasel in the film, played by Brian Dennehy. He wants to, get John Rambo, so, they go after John Rambo in the mountains, and John Rambo uses tactics to shake off the police. And you throw in the character of Colonel Troutman, who would come in later, played by Richard Crenna. And that's the story here to First Blood. Now, it is based on the book, as we know, by David Morrell. I haven't read the book. I would love to read the book. I may even, in fact, pick up the book here soon. But, it was directed by Ted Kotcheff, who, I believe also directed Uncommon Valor. I think that came out the same year or the year before. Uncommon Valor is a great movie. Not many people talk about, but if you haven't seen Uncommon Valor, go check that out. Now, I do have it on Blu-ray. And he also directed Weekend at Bernie's. And he does a solid job here directing. The cast here, of course you have Stallone as John Rambo. This is our introduction to the character. And as we all know, there was a lot of people that were up for this role, including Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Robert Redford, James Caan, Clint Eastwood, Burt Reynolds. Just about every name at that time, was considered for, the character of John Rambo. And, of course, as we know, as for the character of Colonel Troutman, Kirk Douglas was going to play that character, and he ended up quitting just before they started filming because he didn't like the ending. He wanted to retain the ending of the book. But going back to Stallone for a minute, Stallone knocked it out of the park here. It's a strong performance from Sly. For anyone that says that Stallone can't act, you need to go watch this movie. I mean, of course, everybody's seen this movie, but if you haven't, you need to do yourself a favor and watch this movie. If you say that Stallone can't act, the whole speech at the end of the film, every time I watch that speech, it definitely chokes me up. It's a very raw performance, but, Stallone knocks it out of the park here. Brian Dennehy as, Teasel does a great job. He's great support here. Great actor. He was in Cocoon. Later on he would be in that film, Cocoon. And, he did the Jack Reed movies, which I think I have like one of them. One of the Jack Reed movies. And he's been in many more films. The first FX movie. He was a very capable actor and a great talent, and unfortunately he's passed away. But I love Brian Dennehy. In this role, he's a character that you love to hate, and yeah, I mean, you just love to hate that character, because from the moment he meets John Rambo, he's just harassing the character, tell him to take a bath and clean yourself up, and we don't want your kind around this town. I'm paid to keep the town quiet and to keep it that way. We don't want drifters like you. And again, you love to hate that character. Richard Crenna, great actor. He definitely commands the screen here as Colonel Troutman. He's one of the best parts of the movie. And the character, of course, would come back for the sequels. And I would say, he definitely has more to do in Rambo 2 and Rambo 3. But Whenever the Colonel character, Troutman's on the screen here, like I said, Richard Crenna commands the screen. He has some of the best lines in the film. When he's talking to Teasel in the tent and, describing, training Rambo, and, he would eat things that make a billy goat puke. And, I always remember that little bit of dialogue where, Teasel's like, so 200 of my men is a no-win situation for us. And, Troutman's like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but if you're going to send that many, don't forget one thing. What's that? A good supply of body bags. And again, it's just the way that Richard Crenna plays his character. He is one of the best characters of the series. I mean, and that's the one thing about Rambo 4. I love Rambo 4, but, he's definitely missed in that movie. But Richard Crenna is great here. You have David Caruso in an early role. This is before, CSI Miami. And it's fun, to see that character, Mitch. The character of Mitch in this film, a very young David Caruso. And I know later on he would be in Twins with Arnold. And I mean, there's more to the cast here. But really the main players, Stallone, Brian Dennehy, Richard Crenna, even some of the deputies in the film, like, the character of Galt, the guy with the mustache, who's in the that falls from the helicopter and onto the creek. You loved to hate that character. And I think Chris Mulkey was one of the deputies too. So like I said, the deputies do a fine job. And then, like towards the end of the film, you kind of, you get the raw side of, John Rambo. And the film it really communicates the rage and the psychological wounds of the character. And so Stallone does a great job. And like I said, by the end of the film, you get that raw emotion, from Rambo breaking down, talking to, Troutman about, not getting a job, and, the war and how he was treated when he got back home, the protesting and so forth. And I'm not going to go through the whole monologue, but, it's a great speech that Stallone, did a great job, and it's a well acted performance. Amazing score by Jerry Goldsmith, who is a great composer. He's one of my favorite composers, and it's really sad that we don't have a Jerry Goldsmith nowadays. Like, we have scores for movies, and I talked about this in my review for Broken Arrow, but a lot of scores now, it's very in one ear and out the other. Nothing really is memorable. But Jerry Goldsmith, of course, he would go on to score the second film and other films, like Leviathan and, Rudy. He was a great composer. And like I said, I really love the score here, especially the Homecoming score. And yeah, there's a lot of great bits of his music throughout the movie. And of course, you got that song at the end, It's a Long Road by Dan Hill, which is a great song. The film moves at a good pace. It's about an hour and a half, 93 minutes. To me, it's well paced. The locations here really worked well. It's filmed in Hope, in British Columbia. And, Matt Thomas, Studio Red Band up here. My fellow Canadian friend, I'm jealous because I know he went up there recently when they celebrated the anniversary. And he was able to go to some of the filming locations and stuff. And I'm jealous, I have to admit. But, I know that this film here is a big deal in that town. And, it's celebrated every year, I believe. And I think now they have erected a statue of Sheriff Teasel. And, yeah, I would love to visit that town someday. It's on my bucket list. And, go to some of the locations. I think the bridge is no longer there Like in the beginning of the film, you see him on the bridge. I think the bridge is no longer there, but, you know, to see some of the mountains and, you know, the landscapes of the film, you know, the forests, you know, the cliff in the film, you know, where Rambo jumps off the cliff, you know, I believe he may have went there, I don't know, but again, a lot of great locations here, you know, throughout the film with the mountains and, you know, the forests and, you know, the cliffs, and again, the locations really worked well here. And, you know, the impact of this movie, there's so much to talk about. And it's amazing that after 41 years, we still talk about this character and the impact of this franchise and what it did for that time period. You know, it really set a standard for, you know, 80s action. And, you know, the sequels, you know, that would eventually come. And I can't wait to talk about those movies. But, yeah, like I said, it's amazing that, you know, after 4 decades, we still talk about this character. We still talk about this franchise. And, you know, we've all heard about, you know, things like, you know, the original cut of the film was like 3 hours or 3.5 hours. And Stallone destroyed the original cut, you know, thinking that this was going to end his career and all that stuff that I definitely want to get, you know, in depth on, whether it be in a discussion or what have you. But so there's so much to talk about with this movie. But to get to my final thoughts on First Blood, Sylvester Stallone delivers a strong performance as John Rambo, Brian Dennehy is great support, and Richard Crenna commands the screen as Colonel Troutman. Wonderful score by Jerry Goldsmith, and overall First Blood is a classic. And out of 10, I'm going to give First Blood a 10 out of 10. But thank you for watching, and have a good day.